wonderful speaker, and we are in for a treat. In the field of maternal health and women's rights, Kate Taylor's work stands out for its depth, its integrity, and its real-world impact. Many of you Rotarians will remember Kate from her previous visits to the club. What distinguishes her approach is how deeply personal her commitment is. Her experiences have eventually led her to Cambodia, and she has begun working for quite a while now with low-resource communities, and she has established EveryMum, an organisation dedicated to ending preventable maternal death and industry. As a club, the Rotary Club of Adelaide has been proud to support her mission and her work. We have co-contributed to a Rotary District grant, and we also helped secure a $17,000 Baldwin Centenary grant for EveryMum. I'd like to acknowledge the dedication of Gary and Jeff in making that support possible. Through Kate's work, she and her team have helped train thousands of midwives and doctors, strengthening maternal health systems for Cambodian women. We are very fortunate to have her here with us today. Please join me in offering a very warm welcome to Kate Taylor.
Yeah, let's pretend I know how to use that. It's just that one. That one? Perfect. Thank you for having me here today. I've gone old school and I've written my notes just to keep me on track, because I know you don't want to be here. Is that better? Don't want to be here all night. Thank you so much for having me. I feel deeply honoured to be asked to present on this International Women's Day celebration. Before I share my journey, I want to talk to something that seems a little bit forgotten, or if not forgotten, unchanged. Maternal mortality. I know it's not usually the usual lunch conversation.
We can't hear, just put them up.
Usual lunch conversation, but it remains a global crisis. Every 2 minutes, a woman will die from pregnancy-related complications that are preventable. While many Western countries have made significant progress in this area, globally it has actually slowed since 2016, and in some regions outcomes have worsened. While many Western countries, 99% of the women who are dying in childbirth and pregnancy-related complications are in low-income countries. This crisis is not happening because we don't know how to save women's lives in pregnancy. We absolutely know how to do that. In 2026, I'm ashamed to say that women across the globe are still not being valued, protected, or prioritised in healthcare. And I believe we all have both the responsibility and the opportunity to do better. So EveryMum, where did it all begin? We're not working.
You pointed at the...
No, it's not working. I'll just go this way. Allow me to take you back to the 9th of August 1993. I was in labour with my first child. I was here at the Adelaide's Queen Victoria Hospital. I had no idea what was ahead of me. However, I can remember thinking, women do this every day, it can't be that hard. Correct. My birth was relatively uncomplicated, but after he was born, I began to bleed and bleed and bleed. In medical terms, I suffered a severe postpartum haemorrhage and lost over 4 litres of blood. And I know that if I was anywhere else in the country, other than here in this country, I would have died that day. Let's now jump forward to 1998, where I sat on the floor of my lounge room after having my 3rd son. I was picking up Lego, and I wondered if this was all my life. This is what I was going to do. My biggest achievement was cleaning the lounge room floor. That moment, as ordinary as it was, ended up changing everything. The next day I decided that I would volunteer somewhere. The TV series back then, ER, motivated me to do something in the medical field. If that was today, it would be PIP. If anybody's watching that, recommend it, it's very good. I decided I would volunteer, and I rang a few organisations, international organisations, and I asked them, can I work in your medical organisation? And they said, that's amazing. What are your qualifications? Are you a doctor? Are you a nurse? Are you a teacher? Are you a lawyer? Are you a midwife? I said, no, I'm a stay-at-home mum. And they, surprisingly, they said, thanks, but no thanks. Not to be deterred, I decided to change my tack. I decided I would call the smallest organisation, which happened to be a floating medical clinic based in Cambodia, and said, do you have a wish list? And they said, yes, we do. And I said, if I fill everything on that list, can I go? And they said, 100%, of course. They faxed over probably 9 or 10 pages worth of equipment, ranging from basic Panadol to intricate surgical instruments. About 10 months later, I rang them and I said, I have everything on that list and I land on this date. I was picked up at the airport. We went straight to the floating medical clinic. I climbed on and we started off down the Mekong towards our first village. When we docked, I was assigned to work in the antenatal clinic. Now, I was pretty excited about that because my youngest son was only 12 months old at the time, so I could remember being in that space myself. As we docked, the women started gathering, and I ran to the interpreter and said, where's the doctor? Because everybody's here. And they said, what doctor? I said, the doctor taking the clinic. And they said, there's no doctor taking the clinic, you're taking it. And I said, no, you don't understand, I'm not qualified. And he said, you survived 3 pregnancies and 3 childbirths. You're the most qualified person here. So at that, I began. I just said, ask these women the questions that the midwives asked me. It's really important to remain hydrated, I started with, and the women said, we can't access clean drinking water. Didn't know how to respond, so I moved on. It's really important to eat the 5 food groups to stay nourished and, so you can be healthy and the baby can be healthy, and they said we can only eat what we scavenge off the rubbish dump. I kept going and said something really stupid, but I didn't know what else to say, and I just said, when you go into labour, go to the closest hospital. And they said, there is no hospital. At that, after destroying those women's hopes, I looked down and I saw one woman who was sitting in front of me. She had silent tears streaming down her face. I grabbed the interpreter, I ran over to her to apologise that I was no help, that I couldn't help them. And she just looked up and said, my mum died having me. I am petrified. At that, our time was up. We packed up our things. We headed back down the Mekong. I didn't want to leave. I needed to stay. Somebody needed to help. I could not believe that these women had nothing and no one, literally. On my flight home, I still felt really angry. I felt angry that I had everything I ever needed and other women had nothing. I kept thinking, this isn't fair. Somebody needs to do something about this. And I looked into organisations, I did some research, I searched, I tried to find somebody working in that space, and nobody was. That was when I heard that still voice inside that said, you do something about it. I sat with that the entire flight home. So when I landed back in Adelaide, I decided to enrol in the Bachelor of Midwifery. Part of me knew I wouldn't get in because I'd failed Year 12. I needed some tutoring, clearly. But I didn't know what else to do. And then I thought, hand on heart, I could honestly say I tried to help, I couldn't, now it's somebody else's problem. But I got in. I got accepted. I completed the degree. I became a midwife just so I could go back and help those women on the Mekong. So let's now fast forward to 2006. In my graduate year, I'd arranged to work partner with World Vision and I was going to support and educate the traditional birth attendants. I'd worked and planned this for 12 months, and when I arrived in Cambodia, I went to a province called Battambang, to the World Vision office, knocked on the door and said, here I am with all of the stuff that I bought, ready to go. And they said, that man doesn't work here anymore. And I said, that's okay, I'm happy to work with anyone. They said, no, we're not doing anything that he's arranged, and even if we could, you need a letter from the Minister of Health. At that, I was extremely frustrated. Back then in Cambodia, I could buy drugs, I could sell drugs, I could buy weapons, I could even buy children, but I couldn't help the traditional birth attendants. I rang the only person I knew in Cambodia at that time and said, I'm getting on a bus, I'll be back in Phnom Penh, you've got 10 hours to get me an appointment with the Minister of Health. As I got off the bus, he said, you've got an appointment, we need to go straight away. I still don't know today how he did it. Walking into the parliamentary building was possibly the most scariest thing I have ever done in my life. Probably second to uni, actually. No one spoke English, and they directed you by pointing their machine guns. I was shown into this room, told to sit down at this big wooden desk. As they left the room, they shut the doors behind me, and I thought, this is where my life ends. The Minister of Health, he finally, it felt like hours, but I'm sure it was only a few minutes, appeared. And I just started, hello, my name is Kate and I want to work with the birth attendants, but I need a letter from you. And he said, silence. So I sat there. Finally, he said, I have 4 things to say to you. Firstly, thanks for coming through the front door. Most people land in this country, do what they want to do and leave. And I'm like, that's terrible. Exactly what I was trying to do, right? That's terrible. I would never do that. Second, thanks for caring about the women of Cambodia. He said, in a past life, I used to be an obstetrician. I know how they suffer. Third, he said, thank you for not asking for money. We don't have any money. The healthcare budget per person per year is $2. We have no money. And fourth, I'd like to open up every province in Cambodia your training. Now at that I nearly died because I didn't have a proper training package, but I nodded politely and I said, thank you very much. We would be really excited to do that. That specific training program helped us upskill more than 4,000 traditional birth attendants across every province in Cambodia. And it was the beginning of EveryMum's partnership with Cambodia's public health system. Let's now jump to 2019. We introduced point-of-care ultrasounds into one remote health centre as a pilot program. This has never been performed, this has never been done in Cambodia before, and I knew if we could extend the midwife scope of practice, we would save more lives. We selected our first group of midwives, and once trained, we organised an antenatal clinic in the middle of nowhere so they could practice their newly learnt skills on pregnant bellies. This is where we met Sapin. Sapin was 33 weeks pregnant, and this was her very first antenatal appointment. She had never heard of ultrasounds and didn't know she could meet her unborn baby. As the SAE started scanning, she immediately realised something was wrong. You see, her baby's intestines were growing on the outside of her little body. I educated Sapin and her husband about what this meant. The increased risks she now faced in labour, in childbirth. She faced premature labour. Her risk of stillbirth had increased by 80%, and the urgent surgery her little daughter would need immediately. I then handed Sapin and her husband a box of cling wrap. Weird, but very important. I educated her husband about when the baby was born, you needed to wrap her little body in cling wrap and then travel to the only hospital in Cambodia that can do this complexity surgery. As predicted, Sapin went into premature labour, and of course, it was the middle of the night. Labouring, she rode on the back of a motorbike to the closest health centre with her box of cling wrap in hand. Little Jean Yi was born. Against all odds, she survived. The midwives diligently wrapped her little body in glad wrap and handed little Jean Yi to her father to take the 6-hour taxi ride to the only hospital in Cambodia who could take her. He then waited in line for 2 hours before he was admitted, and once admitted, little Jean Yi had to undergo a grueling 5-hour surgery. Because of the ultrasound program, Jean Yi's condition was found, it was managed, and she survived. While there are hundreds, if not thousands, of stories behind EveryMum's work, I'm going to take a moment to share just a snapshot of our in-country impacts. So EveryMum provides online midwifery education and assessments that supports more than 500 midwives every month. We have introduced a midwifery mentoring program connecting 28 volunteer Australian midwives with counterparts in health centres, providing bi-monthly online support, encouragement and individualised clinical care. The ultrasound program has expanded into 15 health centres across 3 provinces, improving antenatal attendance and enabling early identification of pregnancy complexities. We've introduced quarterly ultrasound webinars to strengthen the diagnostic confidence, improving maternal and fetal outcomes. And just recently, we have initiated the first obstetric training program to ensure that women who are transferred into these referral hospitals are received high quality, evidence-based care. Currently, our work reaches approximately 410,000 people across 60 health centres in 3 provinces. This month, literally next week, Tuesday, we're expanding into 2 additional provinces, increasing our maternal health reach to more than 660,000 people. This expansion will add 21 more health centres and 2 more hospitals into our training network, and an additional 5 sites will gain access to point-of-care ultrasound. But perhaps the most powerful stat of all is the health centres where we have introduced our midwifery training and our point-of-care ultrasound has achieved 0 maternal deaths. So that's not bad for an organisation that employs 1 full-time Cambodian worker and 1 part-time worker here in Adelaide. All of our projects are supported by a dedicated team of volunteers who generously contribute their time, their knowledge and expertise. EveryMum has never received any government grants funding, and it is not for a lack of trying, believe me. Instead, EveryMum has been sustained through volunteer fundraising events, private donations, philanthropic support and the generosity of communities who simply believe in making a difference. I would like to particularly thank and acknowledge the support that we have received from local Rotary clubs and Rotary International. The contribution from Rotary has been incredibly meaningful, helping us continue to grow, reach more communities and strengthen maternal health outcomes for women across Cambodia. Today, on International Women's Day, let's stand for women worldwide until they are valued, until they are protected and until they are prioritised. Let's partner together and commit to ending preventable maternal death and injury, because we can actually do this in our lifetime. There's many things that we give to, we work to, which we'll never see, but we can end it in our lifetime. Because I know that you believe, like I do, that no mother should die giving life. Thank you.